But if you're a larger RAA or small RAA and you want to go and sell your business as sort of this freestanding opportunity, um, then you need scalable infrastructure. It's not just even quality management of the firm, but we even look at it, and what private equity firms will look at is they'll look at how many reports does your CEO have? How many reports does your COO have? If your COO has 9 or 10 or 11 people reporting to him, that what that indicates is you don't have a built out infrastructure. So they're looking for, because again, remember, what they want is they want to be able to grow this business. And the only way you can grow and scale is if the infrastructure can support that. They're very interested in organic growth. Are we organically growing? And organic growth is assets coming in versus assets going out. What is the net growth on your assets? Everybody needs to be at least at a 5% net asset growth, not including market, because market doesn't matter.
Hey, welcome back to the Advisor's Compass. I'm Chuck Downs. I'm here with Andy Schwartz, and each month we sit down to have the real conversations advisors are having about growth, scale, and clarity. So if you're ready to grow faster, scale smarter, and build what lasts, you're in the right place. Andy, hello. I'm going to do my best today to keep a straight face. You are wearing a tie. Who tied it for you, and what in the world are you doing with that thing on?
Yes, who tied my tie? What a fantastic question, since I haven't wore a tie in 5 years. I'm laying in bed last night thinking I've got to do a TV thing in New York this afternoon, and I asked, what do I wear? I should not have asked, because then I wouldn't have had to. And they said, no, suit and tie. So I'm doing a suit and tie thing this afternoon, and I tied it myself, Chuck, on the second try. So I was so proud of myself, and feels a little weird. So I tied my tie up.
It's definitely a flashback. It's going back in time.
Crazy.
So you look amazing. Well, enough of the fun and games. Let's get started. Andy, look, for most advisors, their business is their biggest asset. And I think, and you would agree, I know, that advisors reach a point where they start thinking about how are they going to turn that business that they built into the next chapter of their life. And you've obviously been on both sides, figuring out how to monetize your own practice and now helping others do it. What would you say are the top 2 or 3 things that advisors should be thinking about when they start talking about monetizing that most valuable asset?
Yeah, the 3 most important things to think about when you're considering, monetizing your business, especially if that requires a change, to where you are. I always say to an advisor that reaches out to us that there's 3 things that have to be true in order for me to want them to be part of my organization. And I think they have to be 3 things that are true for them to make any change or where they end up. And those 3 things are, first and most important, you have to be happy. So when you're done, you have to be happy. The second is you have to be able to grow more than you can grow currently today by yourself with whatever that decision is. And then the third is maybe obvious, but the economics long-term have to be beneficial. So that's the lens that I would use when I think about, these changes.
That's perfect, Andy. What would you say, 2 businesses, 2 advisory practice, same revenue, what makes one more valuable than the next?
Yeah, that's a great question. What makes one business more valuable than another business, even if they have the same economics, at least the same revenue? One of the things I think that we look for when we're evaluating is, what does the infrastructure within that practice look like? With some organizations, you have firms within firms. And then in some organizations you look at, you have businesses within firms. So it kind of depends on where they're coming from. But one of the things we look at is, what does that infrastructure look like? Because the idea is, when you're selling your practice or merging, if someone's going to pay for it, then they have to believe that your business is scalable and it can grow. And a business can't grow and be scalable if it doesn't have the infrastructure to support that. So that's really important. The other thing that's really important when you look at, valuation, and there's lots of things, but another is growth. Nobody is interested in paying, top multiple for a business that's not growing. And there's two ways to grow a business. There's a lot of inorganic growth in the world today, meaning you buy another practice, which is fine, but you have to be able to demonstrate organic growth, or the business isn't as valuable as you think it is or you want it to be.
How how do client demographics, recurring revenue, next gen as an example, how do those factor into valuation?
Yeah. The other factors that factor into valuation that are really important is we look at demographics. Obviously, if we have younger clients that are savers opposed to an older client base that are pulling money out, that's a more valuable business for obvious reasons, right? That those assets grow. Um, you have to be, if you're an older advisor, if I'm an advisor that wants to, retire, and I'm thinking about the idea that I'm going to sell my business, so I'm going to go to the market. What you have to be able to do in advance of that is there has to be a next gen set up. Because again, as a buyer of practices, I'm not interested in bringing on a 65-year-old zoo-fed bear that there is no succession plan. And that next gen advisor also needs to be someone that we believe can grow. So it's not just a service advisor, but there has to be growth. And you have to figure out a way to be compensating them for that. And that could be a different discussion, but yeah, that's important.
So if an advisor is wanting to position themselves, what are the things, and I think you've said it, but just to kind of summarize it, what are the things that they should be, the top 2 or 3, 4 things that they should be thinking about now to position themselves for that equity event
Yeah.
tomorrow?
Yeah. I mean, so there are a bunch of things that are really important to think about when you're trying to set yourself up for that equity event, but there's also different paths. Are you trying to tuck in to another organization? Do you think that you're an organization yourself that you're going to sell? If you're trying to tuck into an organization, then the infrastructure is less important, because the idea is you're going to tuck in to an infrastructure at the organization you would tuck into. Like for us, we have CSA, think tanks, trading, technology. We provide all that. But if you're a larger RAA or small RAA and you want to go and sell your business as sort of this freestanding opportunity, um, then you need scalable infrastructure. I mean, it's not just even quality management of the firm, but we even look at it, and what private equity firms will look at is they'll look at how many reports does your CEO have? How many reports does your COO have? If your COO has 9 or 10 or 11 people reporting to him, that what that indicates is you don't have a built out infrastructure. So they're looking for, because again, remember, what they want is they want to be able to grow this business. And the only way you can grow and scale is if the infrastructure can support that. They're very interested in organic growth. Are we organically growing? And organic growth is assets coming in versus assets going out. What is the net growth on your assets? Everybody needs to be at least at a 5% net asset growth, not including market, because market doesn't matter. Ideally, if you can get yourself to a 10%, then you've got a very attractive, valuable business, especially if you can demonstrate that there's a path forward to continuing that. And whether that's the way you generate leads, whether that's your process, but that is the most valuable, because again, if people can replicate that organic growth, that you do within your practice or within your firm, then by growing that, hopefully that can be replicated to a larger group. So those are things that are, really, really important. Um, so yeah, I think those are the things that are most valuable.
You you mentioned, your CEO have, 9, 10, 11 direct reports. That's a challenge. It's not good. What are some of the other things that you've seen as you've looked at practices that are kind of pitfalls or roadblocks and mistakes that people should avoid?
Well, I mean, the biggest mistakes we see in the decisions that we make to walk away from or not even make us interested in talking to an advisor, uh, several things that we look for that are pitfalls. One, do not lead with performance. If I'm talking to an advisor and they're leading with their performance, their investment strategy, their acumen, we're not interested because that is not sustainable. So to me, that's a really big mistake. It can't be about your stock picking ability. So we're looking for, and we think that the most successful advisors and practices and scalable practices are planning based, growth oriented advisors. Because if you're a planning based advisor, it would be much more difficult to be replaced by technology. There's lots of things being written. I'm sure today I'm going to get a question this afternoon when I go into the city, and the question is going to be something like, "Okay, so AI." And I did a podcast yesterday, same thing. So how's AI what's gonna happen? You got this big business, you think it's worth something. Is AI gonna replace you guys? Is AI gonna make your business less valuable? And I think the answer is no, it's not. But with that said, it's going to change things. And so one of the other things that people are looking for that is very, very important for the value of your business is, what does your technology stack look like? Are you embracing AI or are you running away from AI? Because you have to embrace the change, and there will be changes. But I think that, when people look and think about those things that are really important, maybe the three most important things would be organic growth, scalable infrastructure, and what does your technology stack look like so that as you go into the future, you will survive, the changes that are coming.
Hmm. This is a good moment to pause and share something that we've been building. It's called the Playbook for Wealth Advisors. If you've built a successful practice, but you still feel like too much runs through you, then this is for you. The playbook is the framework behind many of the conversations we have on this podcast: how to think like an owner, create real leverage, and grow without sacrificing your time, energy, or relationships. Most advisors don't need more ideas. They need a clear way to structure what they already know. And that's what the playbook provides. You can learn more at epicsuccess.com/playbook. Let's get back to the conversation.
What 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 about the questions? Okay, now go back to the other side when you were on the other side and you guys looked at a handful of suitors.
Yeah.
What were the questions that you were asking? What are the questions that an advisor should be asking the
Yeah.
platforms or the potential partners? Um, what are those questions they should be asking?
Sure. So how do you navigate the minefield of all of the noise and all of the suitors and all of the conversations you're going to have when you're considering making a change, whether it's to completely monetize your business or making a change in general to improve your equity opportunity in the future. So a couple of things that are really important. First, try to understand the language, you know, of the conversation. What's the difference in EBITDA and EBOC? Understand that just because someone offers you a higher multiple doesn't mean it's a better deal. For us, we did not take the biggest deal or the biggest multiple. What I was looking for as we, decided to take some private equity investment is it wasn't so much about the money, is about the lift that your partner can give you. And again, it goes back to our very first comment when we started, Chuck. I'm looking for what they should be looking for is, where will I be happy? What organization can help me grow more than I grow myself? And where are my long-term economics? That's the lens that people should be viewing this. And happy is culture. Are these people like me? Are they good people? Are they going to help me grow? Do they care about me? Do they care about my clients? Is this a long-term place for me? We're not a roll up, but there's a lot of roll ups out there. And if you're, or aggregators, and if you just join some aggregator, just beware that not in the too distant future, something's going to happen. And whatever you think you're in, it's going to be different. So again, those are things people need to be thinking about, asking the questions. What's the plan? What's the growth plan, for the firm? If you're talking to the CEO, ask the CEO, what does this thing look like 10 years from now? When people ask me that, we talk about a train ride. We're building a business for the long term. Our kids are in this business. There's probably 10 or 12 of our advisors, including partners, children in the business. The average age of someone on my team is 40 years old. So when we look at this as a train ride, we'll grow the business for 5 years. We'll need some more capital. Our private equity investor might want to jump off the train, although I don't think these people ever want to jump off this train, but they might want to jump off the train. Another group will jump on the train. We'll take some capital upon the balance sheet so we can continue to grow, and we'll give all the partners a chance to, create some liquidity for themselves. Most of them will probably want to leave a lot of it in because that triple or quadruple is going to probably double again. And again, we think about this in the long term. This is going to be more in decades, not in years.
Let's talk about the economics that advisors need to understand. And you mentioned EBITDA and EBOC. I'd never even heard of EBOC until a few years ago. What's the difference between those two, and how and why is that important?
Yeah. So when you think of EBITDA, you think of EBITDA as is earnings before income tax and or interest and taxes, and that's how a lot of things are evaluated. EBOC is income before owner's comp. So here's the game: I do $2 million of profit on my P&L. I come to a firm and they say we're going to give you a 10 multiple, and I say, okay, well that seems pretty reasonable, kind of in the market. But they say, yeah, but your salary is going to be $1 million a year. Well, maybe I'm 64 years old and I don't necessarily want to take $1 million of my 2 million and take that away because that now becomes expense. So now I'm getting paid on the million. So in an EBOX situation, you're getting a multiple on the actual business before the comp. And so they're two totally different dynamics. 10 times EBITDA might be 15 times EBOC. And so, people have to be clear, on what that, actually means.
I mean, that's a really important point. How do deal structures look different from one buyer to another, from one investor to another?
Yeah. So the game is, everybody tells you exactly what you want to hear to suck you in. So the game is they say, okay, Chuck, and you're like, look, I get the joke. I mean, I've had the conversations. I mean, I probably had 10 or 15 very, very serious conversations before we made our deal. And I would say to the guy, look, we get the joke. We understand the math. We understand the metrics. This is what I need for my people in order for this to make sense for us to do something. And they're, oh yeah, we can do that. We can do that. And then what they do is you get down the road and you spend, 8 to 10 weeks. And then they think that you've already in your mind bought your beach house or bought your Lamborghini or Ferrari, whatever makes you, whatever you're going to do with your check. And then they say, oh yeah, well, we're looking at your EBITDA and, there's going to be $1 million more of expenses that needs to be on your books or, whatever they do. And then they think because emotionally you've gotten so attached. So the one thing I would say is if you go into any kind of negotiation especially with private equity, because they're way smarter than us, you know, you've got to go in with no emotion. If we can make the deal, know what your deal needs to be and stick by your guns. What we do, because what we're looking for are partners, not indentured servants. And when we're done, I don't want my partner to hate me, because he made a bad deal. So philosophically, in my mind, I don't want to make a good deal for the firm and I just don't want to make a bad deal. I just want to make a fair deal. And so for us, what we actually do is we take a look at the P&L and I say, Chuck, you've got 2 people on your P&L that I could bring onto my P&L because we're building out our infrastructure and I can increase your EBOC, your profit, if you will, by $300,000 for those 2 people. And we've done this with every deal we do. And then if I take a 9 or a 10 multiple on that 300, we just increased our offer by $3 million. And we're happy to do that because 1, it's fair. And 2, I want to make it attractive. I want a partner to join us. I don't want to be in a situation where we get 10 weeks down the road and the guy's like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you're just a liar. You said that you described this deal and now you've created this deal. And so most important, keep the emotion out of it. A deal is never done until it's done. And time is the enemy of all deals. The longer a deal goes on, the less likely a deal is to happen. And so, but most important, just no emotion, no emotion.
I've worked with my clients that have done private equity deals. I've worked with people that have done private equity deals. I've worked with them after the deals, and I don't know. I can't recall one that didn't share a story of how towards the end everything started shifting and the deal got less sweet and less sweet. So I mean,
It's the
as you
game.
described, it's part of the deal, right? I mean,
It's
it's
the
part of their
game. It's the
deal.
game they play. I mean, and maybe shame on us for not knowing that in advance, but that's the game these people play. And they're counting on the idea that you've already told your wife that she could build a pool in the backyard. I've seen it. I've seen it with my clients. They start spending the money. I'm like, don't spend the money. Your deal's not done. I mean, an LOI doesn't mean anything, and listen, I guess a lot of times it works for them and that's why they do it, but that's not the game we play. It's, to me, it's a waste of energy and a waste of time. And you only have, it took me 42 years professionally to build a reputation and to have a community of people that actually trust me. That can go away really quickly. And that is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
Right. That's right. How, Andy, how can advisors compare different deals? How can they get an apples to apples comparison? How do they do that?
How do you, the way you, the way you try, because it's only try to compare deals in an apples to apples fashion, which is very difficult. And let's talk about where there are differentials that are not always the same. So typically in a deal, you're talking about cash and you're talking about equity. So the cash is cash. So if these guys are going to offer me $10 million and these guys are going to offer me $10 million, cash is cash, assuming we're in dollars and not pesos, right? So let's assume we're all in dollars. But where the real differential comes in is the equity. So in a firm that is growing, especially if they're growing rapidly, then the argument in my mind and what we have as an advantage today that might not be an advantage 10 years from now, but today our equity growth is growing dramatically. So the currency that we're using to buy a practice is much more valuable currency than say a firm that's already done 4 or 5 recaps and is already valued at $3 or $4 billion. Not to say that those firms won't be a good investment, but they're not going to triple or quadruple, because it's just, it's the law of large numbers. So one of the differentiating factors that people have to look at is everybody's going to want to make you take some equity. They want you to have skin in the game, and you should want equity as long as it's the right firm. But make sure, because everything isn't just going to double or triple automatically. You better really make sure that you're making a good investment because that's what you're doing. And they have to be able to demonstrate, how they're going to turn that stock, into a double or triple or quadruple. So that will probably be the biggest differentiating factor. And how are they going to help me grow? How is their process? How is their infrastructure? Their platform. How does that help me grow? And are they really interested in helping me grow? Because everybody wants you to grow, but the people take money from a private equity firm. And again, nothing wrong. These are smart people, but I don't understand how the PE firm is going to come in and help me with my infrastructure. They can make suggestions and they can do spreadsheets. So what you've got to do is make sure you're joining an organization that can actually, plug you in and demonstrate that they can help you grow your practice. And if you can answer the question, I'm going to be happy. These people can help me grow. And the value of that equity is going to be more, than maybe somebody else's equity. Then those are great things to be measuring when you're trying to make an apples to apples comparison, because those are really the most important things, I think, to a deal.
I know how much time you spent over the last 5 years or so looking at different deals and I mean, we share with the audience just how much time you spent and what were some of the mistakes you almost made? Because I know that there were a couple of those deals that looked really, really good, but then, however you figured it out, you realize, hey, the equity is not gonna be the equity I think it is because these are big conglomerates
Yeah.
already.
Well, so I'd like to think that I was smart enough to sort of vet out and not do a deal. I think probably the reason we didn't do a deal because we weren't smart enough to figure out what the hell was even going on over the last 5 years, at least early on. We've always been very, very lucky. But once we really figured it out, what made us, because I was not looking to do a deal 2 years ago, I was done. We were just going to continue to grow the business and we'd revisit in a couple of years because I was sick of the conversation. So, like most things in life, we were very lucky. I got introduced to Joe Duran, but when I met Joe and the Rise team, what I recognized was they could really help me grow my business. And I talk about my enterprise from a structure, from a process standpoint. We had to reorganize our entire business. We were a 1099 group. And so here we are, we look like a band of pirates. We were a firm, but from the outside world, we look like a band of pirates. So I didn't take the money and sell 30% of the business to Rise Growth Partners because they gave me the best multiple. We didn't even shop the multiple. That wasn't even an issue for us. I had a general idea what it was worth. I could have gotten more. I did it because these were the people that could get me from where I was to where we want to go. And we're a third of the way there already. And so, the old expression, what got you here isn't going to get you there. We kind of realized that what got us to where we were, and money wasn't going to be the only solution. It needed more than money. And so pick your partners carefully. It's just like when you get married. When you pick your partner, pick a partner that makes you better. Don't pick a partner that makes you worse, or don't pick a partner that doesn't make you anything. These people made us better. They really helped us operationally. Money's money. And so that was the luckiest. And again, Chuck and I, we've been talking to each other for so long. I always say I am the luckiest guy I know, and maybe better to be lucky than smart, but very fortunate, that, and particularly that's one of the things I'm grateful for in my life, that interaction actually happened serendipitously, and that we were smart enough to identify, what a good partner looks like. So very, very helpful for us.
That's very insightful. A couple of more questions, then we'll wrap this one up. One would be senior advisors, the advisors that are closer to retirement. I know you don't know anyone, intimately well like that, but what should those closer to historical retirement age, what should they be thinking about post sale? How long should they be thinking to hang around? What's their role look like? Share some insights from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, so what should be important to an older advisor, getting toward the end of their career, looking for a home? What should they be thinking about? I hope what the most important thing that they're thinking about is who's going to take care of their clients. I hope, because these people are the people that have supported us. For me, for the last 42 years, there's a community of people out there that have paid for my kids' colleges, have bought my homes, have made a very, very nice life for me. And I am grateful to them, because they had so many choices. So again, it always has to start with clients. What's the best place for our clients? All we work on every day is how do we create a better client experience? How do we earn, the trust that these people give us? So I would want to know that I'm going somewhere that will love my clients the way I love them, will take care of my clients the way I do, and can provide the service that they do. Then what has to happen is there has to be that next advisor. And it's difficult for us because, we're salespeople, we're a personality, everybody loves us, we're irreplaceable, I mean, it's we're it. And so you've got to identify, that person or people, that will also understand the same, culturally, that we work for these people, that when these people, I mean, I'm texting or emailing with clients 18 hours a day. My first thing it's 5:30 in the morning, I get up, I look at my birthday list. The first thing I do is send out a birthday text. I've already had 3 or 4 interactions this morning. Some of it is just personal. Someone had surgery yesterday. Hope you're feeling okay. And she sends me back a picture. She's getting discharged this morning. She's in her hospital bed. Her doctor's there. It's awesome. So they have to, those people that we bring in have to, share that with us. And again, getting back to value, the firm that wants to give you that last, 2 or 3 years of your career, they need to know. Now, maybe that firm can help you do that. We can help people do that. So if we find that 60-year-old advisor that's got 5 more years, or 65-year advisor, that's part of our job. But to me, that's really important. And then you want to make sure that it's fair. It's your life's work. You didn't work your whole life to make a bunch of private equity guys rich, right? You want to make sure that it's fair. And you're not just being gobbled up by either the oligarchs in your current organization or some other, group of, oligarchs somewhere else.
So, two more thoughts. One question, one thought. The thought is, you mentioned 18 hours, and so I know people well enough to think, oh, well, Andy Schwartz is just a workaholic, and he's just work, 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 work. I know, I mean, we speak a lot. You love what you do. It's not work to you. And so just, I mean, this is kind of off topic, but,
Yeah,
can you just kind of address the way that you look at your role as an advisor and the pride that you take in it and the enjoyment that you take? Because that's a key factor to surrounding yourself with like-minded people. I'm assuming.
sure. What I enjoy the most about my work and what I cherish, and people ask me every day, how do you do what you're doing? I run a $2.3 billion book. I'm the CEO of a 15 approaching $16 billion firm. We're growing like crazy. We hired 40 people in Parsippany last year at headquarters, and we brought on another probably 40 people outside in our acquisitions. So how do I do that? Well, first is I don't really see this so much as work. I mean, it's how I fill my days. Um, but I love getting the phone call. I want to be that call. I want to be the one point that clients use. I'm the call. I'm the guy. So whether they're buying a house or they're buying a business or selling a business or having some kind of a difficult issue, if I'm getting a call on a Saturday morning or a text because somebody's concerned about something and has a problem, I do not have a problem as long as I'm not in the middle of something. And look, if I'm at dinner with my kids, if I'm in the middle of something, I'm not a lunatic. I don't schedule things on the weekends. I don't. I mean, my Monday through Friday is pretty busy. But to me, the pressure that we have with this busy schedule is a privilege. It is a privilege. And when I was 22 years old and I was begging people to have a meeting with me, forget about me being their advisor, just please have a meeting with me so I can actually have something to do today. I remember thinking, and I've said it in a couple of talks, that my dream was someday that I would walk into my office and there would be all of these people in the waiting room, and I'd sneak in the back door and think, "Oh my God, I'm going to be my schedule is jammed all day." Well, that is my day. Now they're not necessarily in the waiting room; they're in my Zoom waiting room, and it's all day. But it is a privilege. We get paid for it. It is an honor that people actually trust you enough that you're the call. I mean, what could be better than that? And we can turn it on or turn it off. I mean, that's our, we have the flexibility to do that. But yeah, I think that and we've talked about this. I embrace it. Embrace the challenge, embrace the journey. And so yeah, so I love it. I love it. Yeah, keep it coming.
Yeah.
Keep it coming.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Last question, and that question is, what did your conversations with your clients look like when you did this deal? What are
Yeah.
the client conversations for the new partners that are joining you guys? What does that look like?
So what does the conversation sound like when you're thinking about making a change? And I would even broaden the question. What does the conversation sound like when you're doing anything different? Anything different, whether you're in the place you're at today or whether you're actually trying to make a change. What I say to my people here is there always has to be a why with any change. If we're making a change within the firm that's going to impact our advisors, we lead with why. So the client isn't necessarily interested that this is a good financial opportunity for you, that the equity is going to be fantastic, that you're going to be a happier advisor, that you're going to be able to grow your business more. That's not necessarily the why for the client. What we have to go out into the world with is the reason we're doing this is because we value our relationship with them and they deserve to be served at the highest level. And they deserve everything that is available in the marketplace. And I can't necessarily do that where I am, but I can where I'm going. And let me share a few things that are specific examples. That's what we lead with, because this has to be a win for them, because people are always a little suspicious, or I don't even say suspicious. skeptical of change. Nobody likes change. You think advisors don't like change. Well, clients don't like change either. And so that the momentum of people not wanting to change, which is basically stagnation, is tremendous. It is very difficult. That's something that's very hard for people to get past. But at the end of the day, whatever you do with clients, whenever you ask a client to do anything different, whether it's a custodian change or the way you bill them or the way that you communicate with them, anything, there has to be a why explained to the client. And as long as the why is a good why, which, we think we love our whys, when we're talking to our clients and when our new advisors talk to clients, then you're good. And if you can't come up with a why, then don't do it. And I say a why for them, not for me, not for you, but for them.
Very, very, very insightful. I know this can save people certainly dozens, probably hundreds of hours of just trial and error. So my parting advice would be uh, take an honest look at your business. If someone offered to buy it tomorrow, would you be proud of what they're getting, or would you be scrambling to fix the gaps? And, it totally makes sense to start optimizing now because your future value totally depends on it. So thanks for spending time with us here on the Advisor's Compass. If today's conversation helped you see how to build long-term value and finish strong, we'd love you to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And also share with another advisor who's building towards their next chapter. Because when you know your worth and you plan with purpose, you can create freedom that lasts. Andy, thanks. Great job. We'll see you next time, everyone.
My pleasure, Chuck. It's always good to see you. Take care. Herein referred to as One Point BFG. One Point BFG is not affiliated with Advisor Compass. Chuck Downs is not affiliated with One Point BFG, nor compensated by One Point BFG. The opinions expressed by Andy Schwartz are my own personal views and experiences as an investment advisor representative. The information contained herein is provided for informational and discussion purposes only and is not and may not be relied on in any manner as legal, tax, accounting, or regulatory advice, nor does it constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities and may not be used or relied upon in connection with any offer or sale of securities. The information, as set forth herein, should not be construed or interpreted as One Point BFG's guarantee of any particular investment outcome or guarantee of future investment returns or results.